last unit, or so I'm sorry, section, we talked about triangles and all their properties, you know, the degrees and the side lengths and, you know, relationships and that kind of stuff. So what we're going to do today is get into talking about congruent triangles and how they kind of fit and work together. So we're going to name and use corresponding parts of congruent polygons. So we're going to start initially with just polygons, and then we'll go into be more specific with the triangles. So for congruent polygons, they are polygons with the same shape and same size. They have the corresponding sides and angles are congruent. And so I want you to draw this pentagon. And what I want you to do is to mark the angles. So we're going to mark them 1, 2, 3. And then sometimes what you'll see is something like this, and then 2 with a line through it to show that those are congruent. This one has 3 on it. It doesn't really look like it. I'll go ahead and fix that. But I didn't have an easy way to make that in the figure right off the bat, so I have to draw it in on my own. Okay, so notice that this A right here is between the side with one line and the other side with one line. So that means this side with one line and this side with one line needs to be marked the same as A. That's what the corresponding parts are. So then from here, I went between the side with 1 and the side with 2 this way. So side with 1 and side with 2. So I went this way, and then I worked my way around the figure in that clockwise order. All right, so there we go. Those are marked. Okay, so those would be your corresponding parts. And we'll talk more about that once you get into the class as well. So corresponding parts of congruent polygons, so parts of polygons that match and they have the same size or same measurement. So in this figure right here, here's triangle ABC and triangle QRS. And SQ, this side over here, corresponds to AC over here because they have the same length. So they aren't necessarily in the same position, but they have the same length. So they're corresponding. And just with the same reasoning, if we looked at BC, which is 14, that would correspond to our RS, which is 14. Congruent statement. So in a congruent statement, what we do is we write a statement to identify congruent polygons. So this can be used in any polygons, not just triangles. So we're going to actually go back and name the write a congruent statement based on that pentagon from the last, from 2 words ago. So if we're looking at this, if I name this triangle ABC, I'm starting at A, I go down the 12 side to the B, and then down the 14 side to the C. So when I name the other triangle, and you'll notice I flipped the letters around because I didn't want to keep them all alphabetical order. If I start on the side that's the 12, which is here, my second side, so this is where I started, and then I curved around to this side, right? So if I start at the 12 and I curve around to the 14, I have to start on the 12 and curve around to the 14. So when I name it, I have to name it SQR. So that's your congruent statement. If I go back now to this right here, if I name this pentagon, and this you can add to the card, I just, you know, I don't have any room. A, B, C, D, E. And you'll notice when I name it, I go in clockwise order. I don't jump around A, E, B, D, C, none of that. You have to go all in one direction. So I would say that pentagon ABCDE is congruent to what? Well, what did I mark as congruent to angle A? Well, angle A, I marked congruent to angle V, so we'll start with V. Angle B, I marked as congruent to angle W. And so then since that's the direction I went, I go V, W, X, T, U. And you'll notice each position that the letter is in, those are your congruent angles in your figure. Okay, so third angle theorem. If 2 corresponding angles of 2 triangles are congruent, then the third corresponding angle must be congruent as well. And that would make sense because we have to have 180 degrees in our triangle. So if A and S are the same and B and Q are the same, then R and C would have to be the same. So we don't have to have, you know, all of the information to find out, but we can, and we can work with the numbers, but we can use this theorem to say that this is why they are the same. So let's look at this and see how to write our congruent statement. So first of all clockwise or counterclockwise. Okay, so you get to decide which way you want to write it. That is not the word that I wanted to write at all. Oh my gosh, that was weird. Okay, so all clockwise or counterclockwise, you get to choose the order. So you're either going all around this way or you're going all around this way. It doesn't matter. So this is a quadrilateral. So I'm actually going to write the term quadrilateral. Lateral, there we go. This just wasn't working. And so let's say I name this PQRS. So PQRS is congruent to what? Well, I started with this angle, right? So what is congruent to angle P from this figure? Angle G. So quadrilateral G. Then I went to Q, so I did P and then I did Q. So Q has the 2 lines in it, so which one has the 2 lines in it here? It's F. And then I continued in that fashion, so now I would go to E and then to D. And so this would be the congruent statement down here. Okay, so all in order. And then you'll notice as well that if you're looking at the letters PQ, the side length here, is the same as GF, the side length here. And then QR, which is your middle 2 right here, should be the same as FE because they're in the same position, and it is because they each have the 3 marks. So that's how that works. So here's another example, and we're going to find all this missing information, and then actually we're done after this. So in this statement right here, triangle RSV is congruent to triangle TVS. Well, what that means then is that angle R is congruent to angle T. So we're going to go ahead and mark that. So angle R here is congruent to angle T here. All right, angle S is congruent to angle V. Well, that's a little bit confusing, right? Because S is here and here, so that doesn't really help. So how can we tell what to do, where to go? Well, look at the order of the letters. RS is this side, is congruent to TV, which is this side. And then we have SV right here, congruent to SV right here. Well, those are the same, so that makes perfect sense. So then that would mean that, I'm going to go ahead and mark that, and then RV3 is congruent to ST. And you'll notice that RV first and third, TS first and third. Okay? So now that we've marked all that, when we're looking at this, if I go from R to S to V, this angle from one side angle marked or side marked 1 and side marked 2 should be TVS, side marked 1, side marked 2. So this is also a right angle because those two are congruent. So that would mean then that this angle would be congruent to this angle down here. So now to go through and find all our angle measurements or side and angle measurements is really easy. So let's see how we do this. Starting with the measure of angle SVT. So the measure of angle SVT right here, that is a 90-degree angle. Okay. Measure of angle VST. Well, VST. Well, if we're looking at this and the way that this is written, we know that this angle right here is congruent to that one right there. So that one is 78 degrees. The measure of angle R, well, if this is a 90-degree angle, then 78 plus this one has to equal 90. So that would be a 12-degree angle. The measure of angle T, well, T is congruent to R, or the fact that this is 78, so this has to be the same. And then we have side lengths, so RV and RV, which is marked with the 3 lines, is congruent to this one, which is marked with the 3 lines. So RV is equal to 24.5. And then we have to find RS, or Y anyway. So to find Y, we know that RS is congruent to VT. So to find that, we'll take 2y minus 1 and set it equal to 24. So add 1 to both sides to get 2y equals 25. Divide by 2, and you end up with y equals 12.5. So there's all your information. So labeling is really important. Making sure you understand how to read this information is really important. And remember, it's the order of the letters that tells you what's congruent to what.